Hey everybody, what's up? It's Dr. Lily here with Psychology Uncensored, and I have some good information to share with you guys today. In my years of clinical practice, forgiveness has been a piece of everyone's story at some part, either directly or indirectly. And a lot of people have different ideas of what forgiveness is, what forgiveness means. So I wanted to do this video on this to just put out some information to help anyone who's listening to understand forgiveness at a deeper level, at a clinical level, at a rehabilitation level. So I want to go ahead and just define forgiveness for you guys. Forgiveness is the process of letting go of resentment, anger, or the desire for revenge towards someone who has caused you harm. And that harm doesn't have to necessarily be physical harm. It could be mental or emotional harm as well. What forgiveness is not, is it's not excusing this individual or condoning or forgetting the harm. Nor does it mean that you are gonna go through a whole reconciliation process with this individual. At its core, forgiveness is an internal act of releasing our negative emotions that we're holding inside of us and shifting the perspective. So just some key points I want to throw out there. Forgiveness is a conscious decision to release the bitterness we're holding inside of us. It's an emotional process that can restore our peace. It's a way to reclaim our personal power. And it's a gift to ourselves, and sometimes it can be a gift to our offender as well. Some key points of what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not forgetting about or denying what happened in the situation. It's not saying that whatever happened to us was okay or acceptable. It's not an automatic reconciliation with the individual who did the injustice. And it's not a weakness. On the contrary, forgiveness actually takes a lot of strength and maturity. So when I give you guys that information, what do we do with it? The first thing I want you to do with it is actually, take some time to think on this. Forgiveness is for me. It's not for the person who harmed or offended or hurt me. Forgiveness is for me. If I walk around every day of my life and I am holding on to the negative emotions of every person who has done some type of harm to me, I'm gonna just be this box of spitefulness and bitterness and resentment, and my life is gonna be pretty bleak at that point. So when we take time to think about forgiveness being for us, what does that truly look like? And it's a concept that a lot of people really struggle to grasp. It's so ingrained and embedded in their head that forgiveness is about just excusing the behavior of this person who did some type of harm to us. And that's truly what it's not. Forgiveness can happen internally, in which the person who has done some type of injustice to us, they might not even ever know that we have internally forgiven them. Forgiveness can be a verbal statement, you see this a lot of times with little kids, right? When we teach them to say, I'm sorry, and then I forgive you, and kind of to go about their day. In an adult world, it doesn't necessarily have to happen that way. And sometimes it does. And when it can happen that way, when a conversation can be had and amends can be made, that's a great way for forgiveness to play out. But that's not always the case. Especially when I think about all the incidents that I've worked with in my clinical practice. Some of them are incredibly hurtful and mentally and emotionally harmful to individuals. And there are also times when victims don't have the opportunity to even connect with an offender to do some type of verbal reconciliation or act of forgiveness. So on an internal level, when we think about taking steps towards forgiveness, the first step is to really acknowledge the hurt that we feel. Suppressing it will do us no good. I'm sure you've all heard that. Even in joking conversation, right? But don't suppress what's happened. Really take a minute to name it. Name what happened to you, name the feelings that you're having from this situation, and then also take time to recognize how it has impacted you as an individual. moving throughout your world, you know? Has whatever happened to you impacted your ability to parent, to do your job, to be a spouse or a partner, to engage socially with your friends, right? Look at the impact it's had on you and recognize that. And when you see this impact that it's had on you, it'll help you reach towards that desire to forgive, because you want to undo some of these negative things that it has caused in our lives. And once you get to that point and you see how it's impacting you, you know, then you can make the decision, you know, I think it's time to forgive, right? And once you make that decision, right, commit to it. A lot of times professionals will talk about, you know, the empathy piece, right? So can we empathize with, you know, our offender? When a situation happens that causes hurt to us, you know, in that moment, our feelings are strong, and we don't often have the cognitive space to conceptualize what was going on with our offender that led to the offense being committed. And sometimes it's something simple, right? If you're going to the gas station, you know, you got to run in and get your banana and your smoothie for your morning breakfast, right? And the guy in front of you whips the door open, and he didn't recognize that someone was behind you, and you get smacked with the door, right? And all of a sudden your nose is bleeding, you're in excruciating pain. In that moment, right, all we can think of is this guy is a jerk. He has no common sense. He doesn't have any compassion. He's not paying attention, right? We can just list off all these assumed negative attributes of this individual. When in reality, you know, that guy might have woken up late because he was up all night with a sick kid, and he's rushing to get to work because if he's late, he's going to lose his job. And if he loses his job, he's not going to be able to pay his rent. And really, it was just a lapse, you know. So in a situation like that, right, there's time to just like empathize, like what could that individual have been going through, you know? And then there's other times when I work with individuals who have had some pretty heinous crimes committed against them, right? There's not time to think of what is that person going through. We don't want to look for anything that is going to help justify their behavior, because there probably isn't any rational justifications for that behavior. But it's a really good step to pause when we recognize what's happening, just to see, is there that piece, is this piece important for me to think through? And getting to the decision, building up to this decision to actually forgive, right? It might take you a week, it might take you a month, it might take you a decade. But this process is to release your resentment, so it is not taking away your peace. You know, I think of other instances. Something that I work with frequently is like infidelity. And everybody has a different level of forgiveness when it comes to infidelity. Some people will hold on to it and take it to their grave. But others really just want to let it go. That doesn't mean that if they choose to forgive their partner, that they're jumping back into the relationship and moving on as if nothing happened. But you know, if you think about a relationship that's been a year or 5 years or a decade, right? This person has been a part of your life. You have adapted your life to this individual. And to wake up every single day with the memory that this infidelity happened can cause a lot of resentment and sadness and depression and lack of motivation and many more negative attributes. And to say, I've hit a place where I need to forgive this individual so that I can wake up tomorrow without all that negativity. This is really what forgiveness is about. Again, it's not forgetting. It is not moving forward, acting like nothing ever happened. It's truly just letting go of all the hurt that you have in your heart that is impacting your ability to function as you go throughout your day. And once you can get to that place to say, like, okay, I am going to let go, your next steps are to work on releasing the negative emotions and rebuilding who you are. Now, again, forgiveness is for ourselves, but a lot of times there's obstacles, and sometimes these obstacles are obstacles that we place, right? We grew up in circumstances that taught us how to hold grudges, towards one another. Sometimes the trauma or the betrayal is so deep that we can't see past it. And at that point, get some help. Talk to a counselor. Grab your best friend. Go for a walk. Process it, right? And the fear of being hurt again. So even if we believe like we have forgiven that infidelity, as I was speaking of earlier, right? And we get to a place where we want to move on and start a new relationship. If that fear comes with us into our next relationship, we haven't really forgiven, because forgiven is the process of letting it go and bringing our peace back to ourselves. And if we're going into a relationship and this fear is overwhelming and it is like interfering with our ability to engage in this new relationship, we haven't really let go. And sometimes, people struggle with never getting that apology or even just accountability from that offender. And the reality is you may never get that apology, and that individual may never be held accountable. Those are things that are without or outside of your control. And recognizing that they're outside of your control is part of this cognitive process of getting to a place of letting go. When we get to a place where we are ready to forgive, there are significant benefits. The number one that I believe is so prominent in life is emotional freedom, right? We can go through our lives without this bitterness that we're feeling holding us back from living, and we can just get back to joy. Like, to me, that's like such a high goal to work towards achieving, is just feeling the joy. Another benefit is healthier relationships, right? When we can forgive, when we can let go, when this fear has dissipated from us, right? We have restored trust. And that's usually across all of our relationships, whether it's with our partner, with our children, with our parents, with our boss, with our coworkers, right? We can go in, we can feel some joy, we can restore trust in the people that are in our lives. There are a lot of physical benefits as well. Our stress is reduced significantly. We can sleep better and engage in healthier habits. And that reduced stress piece is huge, because the more stressed we are, the more our limbic system is working overtime and sending cortisol through our body, which can really impact our cardiac health. So, hey, and we all need a healthy heart. But another benefit is, for some people, not all people, but like spiritual growth, right? We can gain like a closer alignment with compassion, humility, and wisdom. So just going back to that emotional freedom and some psychological aspects of this, right? When we can let go of something and we can reduce our stress, we're also reducing our anxiety and the depression that we're feeling. We can work towards getting past any rumination that we have engaged in the process of holding on to this injustice in our lives. And you'll notice cognitive shifts, and you'll reframe what happened, right? And you won't necessarily be referring to your offender as a monster or this horrible, horrible person. That's not always the case, but more of just like, hey, like this is another imperfect human living in our imperfect world, and he made a mistake. So we can shift the way that we think of other people. And I thought it was really interesting too. So when we talk about, some biological or neurobiological impacts of forgiveness, right? So I kind of mentioned how letting go can reduce our stress, which is reducing the impact of our limbic system, right? So when we are holding grudges, when we are holding on to anger and resentment, like our amygdala, so that's a little almond-shaped piece of anatomy deep in the middle of your brain, and it is the area of the brain that really controls the anger and fear center. And when we're holding grudges against other individuals, it is activated quite frequently. When we engage in the act of forgiveness, our prefrontal cortex, which is this area right behind your forehead, and this is where a lot of your cognitive processes take place, including empathy, so which is an emotional impact. But aside from less cortisol pumping through our body, research has also showed the lowering of blood pressure and stronger immune systems, which, hey, both are a positive. All right, so let's say we hit this place where I am ready to forgive, I am ready to let go, I am ready to move forward into my life healthier, happier, full of joy. What does that look like? Well, a lot of that is dependent upon yourself, right? And again, I want to go back to this concept of it's not just forgetting what this individual does and like moving forward in life. You might have to work to set boundaries, right? It doesn't mean that you forgive someone and go back into a relationship so that it can happen again and again and again. Forgiveness might mean, hey, I'm no longer holding a grudge against you. What happened, happened. But what is between us has to shift. So that could be terminating a relationship. That could be setting stricter boundaries within the relationship. These are just some ideas based on and depending on, what it is you're working towards forgive. And it's really good to kind of journal and brainstorm ideas for what these boundaries might look like. And it doesn't mean that once you set these boundaries, they have to stay where they're at when you set them. That as you move forward into the world, you can shift and adjust, right? As new circumstances come up. But like taking that minute to actually just say, like, now that I'm letting go, what does that look like for me? What do I need in my life? What do I need to get rid of in my life? And what do I need to shift? And really focusing on the positive aspects to help promote that joy. Hey, before I go, I had just Googled some amazing quotes on forgiveness for you guys, because I think we all love quotes. And there's a handful that came up. Actually, there was like hundreds of thousands that came up, but there's a few that as I was going through, I thought were really important to share with you guys. And the first one is, true forgiveness is when you can say thank you for that experience. Oprah Winfrey. The second one, forgiveness does not change the past, but it does enlarge the future. Paul Boos. Forgive others, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. Mel Robbins. And be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ God forgave you. Jesus. So I want to challenge everyone today to just pause for a few minutes and close your eyes and take a deep breath and search your body, search your soul, search your heart. Where are you holding on to grudges? What grudges should you let go? And if you choose to let them go, what does life look like once you have? Thanks for joining me today, guys. If you're new to the channel, I would appreciate the support. Hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, click the like button. If you have any questions, put them in the comment box. I'd love to hear from you. And I hope you guys all have a great week. Peace out.